Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation. I am your post-COVID co-host, Jesse. It has been a long time since we recorded, but I am finished with my Springsteen vacation. I am finished with my bout of COVID, and I am thrilled to be in the news studio with Lou
Hello, everyone.
and Karen.
Hello.
So we apologize for the break. That was not planned, but it is sometimes how the world works.
Real life gets
Uh,
in the way.
yes, it does.
Yep.
Today we are talking season 2, episode 5, and now for a word, which is one of those episodes where they kind of break the format, and it is ISN is there on Babylon 5 to film a documentary. And so we have the show does this format of either newsreel footage or the anchor talking. I remember being really happy with this. MASH has done it. Other series have done it, but I thought this was really well done. And I'll start with you, Karen. Quick thoughts on it.
I enjoyed it. I like that it advances the story, and I love these broken format episodes, especially when it's like a newscaster. We had discussed that MASH also did an episode like this that was highly critically acclaimed. I think it was a two-parter. I'm not sure, but it was really good, and I feel like the same happened here, that we end up seeing things through a different lens, catching some things, in underlying tones, and, more with the Narn and the Centauri. So I really enjoyed it. And I think it was a novel way to advance the story a little bit more.
Good. And Lou, how about you?
Curious episode. It felt like it was a season too late because it answered a lot of questions that I've been bugging you guys with since we started doing this podcast. So I would have appreciated this last season more. And it was a interesting way to do an info dump of all the hanging threads that the series has carried with it since the pilot. So I like the idea. I don't know the behind the scenes story of it. I'll be curious to hear why this episode came about to be, because it seems to be a pretty blatant homage to the MASH episode, but maybe that's just my perception of it because that's obviously the most famous version of this type of episode that I've seen done before. So I'd be curious to hear the background on it. And it was more enjoyable on my second viewing when I knew what to expect than my first viewing. I was actually a little pissed off with it, to be honest, but I enjoyed it much more the second time.
One of the notes that JMS said in the Lurker's Guide is, and I'll quote him, "For those who've been nudging other folks to try out B5, you may want to tell them that this coming bunch of episodes is probably the best time to dive in, and particularly our second new show airing the first week of May is designed in part to help new viewers coming to the show to catch up on background. No, not a clip show or anything like that. I think you'll like it." So I think that's kind of I don't know. I guess I should have done some more research on why he decided to do this. But I think it was a fun story and very well done. So one of the things that is very clear in this is, Earth is still very concerned about Babylon 5. There's a lot of different people similar to today where people are not in favor of the United States spending money on foreign aid. So there is this. So everyone is trying to spin things to their best knowledge in front of the news crew. So Lou, let's start with you. Thoughts on this? What's going on? Kind of pick anyone you want to do on you want to visit with about that.
I think the most interesting or obvious homage to the MASH series was the conversation with the doctor, where he was talking about ejecting somebody out of a space airlock for a spacewalk, and it reminded me of the scene with Father Mulcahy when he was talking about watching the doctors operate on soldiers in the operating room, and it was so cold that they were warming their hands over the open bodies of the soldiers. And I think they were trying to go for that in that scene, and obviously it didn't have the same emotional impact. And I guess it explains the doctor's behavior in certain respects, but I found that was the most obvious homage to the MASH version of this episode. And the second one that I really enjoyed for the most part was the conversation that the interviewer had with Delin, and then sort of turned it on her, like sort of set her up for, making her feel comfortable. And then she sprung that question about making her appearance to make herself more human-like. I thought that was a nice twist on the and it's a standard interviewing technique as well for a lot of newscasters as well. So I enjoyed that, and I thought that the actor she played that scene really well, and Delin's reaction to her question about that was very good as well. So those were the two beats or pieces that stuck out the most to me. I'll stop there because I could just kind of go. I could just wander through the whole episode. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Karen. Thoughts
you
on
could
those?
have continued.
Yeah.
So I want to know personally what pissed you off about it the first time through?
It felt like a cheap ripoff of the MASH thing, and it doesn't carry the same gravitas because the MASH episode was based on real world events, and we knew the characters very well at that time. So when they were relaying their stories to us, we understood where they were coming from a lot more. Whereas in Babylon 5, I don't think they've established the characters that well at this point yet. So from an informational point of view, I wish this episode would have come earlier. From a character point of view, I think it would have been better in a later season. So that's why I was kind of upset about it. And it doesn't work on a certain level for me as well, because the woman who I have no trouble with, the actor who played the newscaster, but she's not a real newscaster. Like when MASH did their episode, they actually got a real newscast person to do that, which really, I think, lent to the authenticity of the style of it. So, but fortunately, watching it this again, I let all that preconceptional stuff on my part go by the roadside, and then I enjoyed the episode a lot more. So it was definitely one that sometimes you just watch something and you're just in a weird frame of mind or something, or you have these preconceptions that it's not giving the episode a fair chance. And I definitely liked it a lot more. Though I stand by my comment, it should have been in the first season, so they could have explained all this, what everything was, and who all these people were, and what their grievances were, and so forth. So, yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. The MASH episode, again, I'm not sure whether it's two or I should have looked it up.
I think it's only one.
Is it only one? Okay. But yeah, I love that they got a real reporter to do that. The fact that it resonated with us, even if we didn't. I mean, I wasn't alive during Korea, and you guys weren't alive during Korea. So we didn't have firsthand knowledge of it, but it was a part of our past.
Mm-hmm.
And so it resonated on those lines that, it was something that we could actually see. Hey, Korea wasn't just this abstract thing. There were people over there doing this. And in this case, it's definitely not that. It is science fiction. It is something that, we can look at and see, okay, I correlate it to real things, but, it's still fantastical and, it's harder to connect with. I agree with that. I do think it lacked that kind of, you say gravitas, that's a correct word. I mean, I think that's a good way to put it. It lacked that emotional punch for me that the MASH episode did. However, it's science fiction.
True.
So, we do look at it through that lens as well. And I could appreciate it for what it was. And yeah, I did appreciate it more as I watched it 3 times because we had this break. And I think this last time I watched it, I appreciated some of the nuances a little bit more because it just, okay, yeah, I get it. I'm familiar with the fact that they put this here. We know who the characters are to a certain extent. And, it got us up to speed on quite a few things. And you mentioned that as well, that it did kind of answer some questions, which I really enjoyed that part too. So yeah, I did like it. The actors that were in it, I think were spot on. I can't remember her name, but again, I'm terrible. I'm sorry. I should have looked this stuff up.
The newscaster?
Yeah, she's been a veteran of soap operas and things like that. Kim Zimmer, thank you. Yes. She's been in a lot of things. I'm sure you recognize her from stuff. She was on One Life to Live and Guiding Light. So, I mean, that's it. People make fun of soap operas, and I get that they're melodramatic, but you do learn your craft because you're there every day in the trenches and learn how to do things. And I think it showed in this episode. But yeah, I'll leave it there as well, since I'm just going on and on.
Since you just talked about the soap operas, I just was listening to a guy interview for the Hallmark Channel podcast. There's the guys that do the Hallmark, and he said that everyone is kind of has a shock when you sign up to do your first Hallmark movie. It's in Canada and the pace that they do. He says, unless you've been on a soap opera, and then you're kind of go, poof, this is nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Mura Furlan said that this is one of her favorite episodes because one of the reasons she left Yugoslavia is she was an actress there, and the press were unhappy she refused to take sides during the war. David Corwin, the guy that I think has a great moment, is the first time that he's been giving a rank and a name. And I do think that was a very funny moment when the reporter is talking to him and he goes, no, it's a calm and pleasant environment. And I've never been treated poorly. And Susan behind him.
With Susan in the background.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah, that was really, really well done. I thought the way they played it was fine. I thought it was kind of a cheap shot of the newscaster to talk about the humans that died. Because once again, I go back to, and I know it's a cliche, but we were at war, right? It just doesn't seem to be, it is not fair to hold them accountable. I thought she played the scene wonderful. I thought Muir and Fairlin, Delenn,
they both did.
Yeah, and just like, I need a moment, and they're like, no, don't take a moment. This is great. We got to do this. I did love the big deal about we have an exclusive, and you really just see the Vorlon for like 2 seconds, right? Like,
Yeah.
tell me you got that. Tell me you got that.
Yeah, that was good.
That was nice. Yeah.
Well, but again, that shows us exactly how mysterious they are.
Right.
You know, it kind of enforces that to us, the audience.
Yeah.
Well, we've hardly seen them at all, and he is on this station, full time, where people can, they have access to him of a sort, if he wants to have access with them, and he's spoken to Sheridan. So again, that shows how important it is that he's talking to Sheridan, I guess. So even that tiny little beat kind of gave us more info on, how important Kosh and Sheridan talking is.
So, and yeah, another thing, Lou, that you kind of mentioned, if you go to Lurker's Guide, JMS said this is probably the most unusual episode to date, so much that I was concerned about Warner's approving it. And when he submitted the script, he did not put in for script payment because he wasn't sure if they'd accept it and let us make it. He said that it's not controversial per se, but it does take our entire show and put it on its head for the entire hour. So I think it is. This has to be the MASH thing had to be an influence, not as a copy. Just like, what could we do with our world? And this also, it gives you a chance for the Londo and Jakar characters to fight in the world of spin and propaganda. So Karen, I'll start with you. Give me your thoughts on both how Londo appeared on screen, how Jakar appeared on screen, and I guess we'll get into the little bit of, there is a battle happening, that there is some controversy on this.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty true to life, the spin, quote unquote, and there was a lot of that in this episode. She actually, makes a point to say, well, they both want peace, but they're both at war. I feel like in that moment, she was okay, I'm going to do this and people will probably get mad at me. She's an MSNBC reporter. And a lot of the other times she was a Fox News reporter. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so she was kind of there to push a narrative that I think Earth was heading towards in that moment. Kind of, when she spoke to the senator several times, you could tell that there was kind of an agenda happening there. But I do think that when she commented on that, that they both want peace, but they don't really want peace, I think that was more her conscience was telling her she had to, she had to be true to that. So I feel like that was a moment based, kind of grounded in what our journalistic integrity should be. And the rest of it was, and it was long before we had done anything like Survivor or anything like, The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, this reality TV kind of thing. So it's almost like they were looking forward into our actual history, where all this, histrionics and, trying to see into like the bedroom of someone, almost, where she was using all the cameras in the station. She was using the tech cameras and the cameras that were pointed out, she was like tapping into stuff to see things. And even, I guess, on her ship, when they came in, they were using
they filmed it from the beginning. They talked
about
that, yeah.
Right. So she was trying to get a lot of different angles, but she had one. that she was focused on, and she was going to find some way to make Babylon 5 look bad.
Yeah. I just put in our chat a quote that JMS talked about, that in a lot of ways this story is it is in theory about Babylon 5, but in the reality this is telling us more about what's going on Earth than it is that. And we do have the Ministry of Peace. We have the Ministry of Public Morale. One of the senators is no longer there, and it is very much, there is a scene, and I hadn't forgotten, Lou, I'm going to get you to talk about Jakar and Londo, but the idea, it's almost they didn't want to admit that we lost the war, right? And like, if we did this again, it was almost like, and I'm not making light of a war, but it's almost like a diehard sports fan that's saying, oh, if we did this game again, we'd lose. Yes.
Right.
And there is a lot of, and I think this is not something new. There is nothing new under the earth, as they say, but the idea of, I should just worry about my home world. I should just worry about, whether I'm pre-World War II Germany. I should just worry about Germany. I should do isolation in the United States. I should do, England isolation. And Earth is saying we should just worry about Earth. And the Earth loyal population has been held hostage by a violent minority in Mars. There is a lot of propaganda happening on this. So comments on that. And also, I think Londo is brilliant in this episode, and I think Jakar is doing as well. Londo is pushing this really strong. Everything is good. We're just here to help people. And I think Jakar is using the media to try to get extra help. So
I agree.
And then,
let me just say one thing. It made me hate Londo more, I have to say. And I love the actor. I love his acting. I have loved the character, and the fact that he makes me angry, I mean, that's a testament again to his acting. So I hated him in this episode because he was just so smug and everything. And I felt terrible for Jakar. I felt like he was backed into this corner. And yes, he was using it to maybe get help, to put that out there. And I also think he was just scrambling at this point to try and grasp some kind of hold on things. So, I forgot to mention that completely. But so go ahead, Lou. Your turn.
Yeah, I think this episode really, from a likability perspective, really hurts the Londo character, because he came off so smug and so arrogant in this episode. And the claims that Jakar made against him were proven true. So that further cemented their positions. And I thought Jakar came off very sympathetic in this episode. And it's interesting in this day and age that the spin that you're seeing being done by both of these, well, I can't really say Jakar is spinning anything, but he's passionate for a reason, and we got the backstory of his childhood, which was probably the most touching part of the episode, because we know the character but we don't know his background. So that was probably the most even more than Delenn's scene. I really appreciated that bit of background information from Jakar. Would have been nice that it could have been done in a more showy than telly manner, but I understand that they have a lot of balls to juggle with this series. So that worked for me really well. I really liked his arc in this episode, and it just really bums me out to see Londo like just owning it, as we say in today's political parlance. He's just owning or doubling down on this whole position that he's taking about that, that we're so good and we reached out to help these people and they don't appreciate the things that we're trying to do for them, and we know better than them, and blah blah blah. And I was just like, dude, seriously, this is really bumming me out that you're acting like this in this episode. But that was what it was all about. And that moment in the council chamber where Delenn, like when Londo said it's our sovereign right to be here, and then she says the sovereign rights of any race end when they threaten innocent lives. And I thought, wow, that is a statement that could be easily parlayed in today's world in so many aspects. I mean, in your country, obviously the Second Amendment issues that you people have with your gun problem is, like any right that comes at the cost of innocent lives is a right that needs to be reexamined harshly. And I don't want to pick on Americans, because I'm not saying Canadians don't have their issues too, but you guys control the media like so much more than any other country, and it's a big problem in your country. And I know there's going to be a lot of listeners now who are Second Amendment right, pro whatever, but my God, it's just unbelievable what's going on, and I just don't understand how anybody can still put their rights above all the lives that's costing right now. So I'm sorry if I got on a soapbox on that one, but it's just a bit of insanity that I just don't understand. And I don't know if that was the intention of this episode to kind of Trojan horse that in there, but it applies beyond just Second Amendment rights. It's like anytime you claim a right, and that's fine as long as you're not harming anybody else in the process. And that's where that is the number one right, is for people to be able to live safely and freely in the country that they're in. And that's the first right, that every citizen should have to be free and to live their life in safety and harmony, as much as possible. On the harmony part, obviously there's things are going to happen. So from that perspective, I was quite, again, why I'm having a hard time finding any empathy for Londo. So it's, that was quite powerful stuff. And the Earth aspect of it was interesting too, because the senator was saying that, now it's been 14 years and we've really built up our forces, and if it happened again, it would be a different outcome. And then Sheridan says in the interview right after that, he says we don't have the technology. Like, you're crazy to think if we're going to be able to win any kind of war again like this. And the reporter says that well, yeah, but we won the last war. And I'm surprised that she asked that question, because is it not common knowledge that the Minbari surrendered not because they were being beaten, but for another reason? So obviously there's a big misperception on Earth that we won that war.
No one knows why. That's a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is technically Earth won because Minbari surrendered.
Right.
So it's been 14 years. You can imagine with propaganda, with fake news, with the, over and over, the spinning is absolutely. They knew that once they got to Earth, we were going to destroy them. And so they ended up, and even though, other military, like we heard Sinclair, and we, talking about being on the line, and others that, we were just falling like flies. So I think that is the perception, and the propaganda is we won. And they don't want to dwell on that this was they let us win, from their perspective.
And then on the flip side, if you want to carry this out a little further, you've got Jakar saying never again.
Yeah.
Like that's words we've heard before, right? And he says carry special meaning for humans as they do for us. And Yeah, they do.
Yeah. And
So,
it is, I think that was very powerful, talking about his father being killed
yeah,
and this idea. And I love the idea that Londo, we came to help the Narn.
yeah.
We are just there. And it is it is a wonderful dance of deception and lies and twisting of facts
Hmm.
that continually um, give us um, reminders of 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 2 weeks ago, right?
Right.
Yeah, it is. Karen,
Yeah.
it looked like you had something to say. No?
I
Okay.
was
No.
just agreeing, really.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And I did like that. Well, okay, you mentioned Second Amendment rights, and yes, that's a huge issue right now. Um, and again, I don't understand. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I don't understand why people don't get that a right is not a right if you're infringing on other people's rights.
Yeah.
And it even comes down to how basic it is to say, yes, we have freedom of speech, but you can't just say whatever you want without impunity. You can't stand
Hmm.
up and say fire in a theater without something happening to you. You have the right to say whatever you want. However, the other side of that coin is if there's some kind of blowback, then you have to deal with that too, because they also have free right.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a basic thing, no matter what it is. Second
Yeah.
Amendment, the First Amendment, just regular basic human rights is,
Ten
don't
Commandments.
kill, don't, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of pushing on that sort of button for us. No matter what you believe in, there's something that you believe in enough to say, someone else shouldn't infringe on that.
Hmm.
And I did like that it's very much a correlation to no matter what the time it is, there's something you can draw from that. And the never again thing really hit home. I was getting a little misty when Jakar was talking about how his father and mother were slaves to the Centauri,
Yeah.
and that he just spilled something. His father just spilled something, which would be
Yeah.
nothing. And he was killed for it. So uh, I have to say, and I said it earlier, but Jakar to me was the hero of this. And I mean hero as in stood out. And then secondly, Delenn in that scene where, she's confronted, like literally confronted with her part in whatever went down, saying, well, this is great, but how do you think it's being perceived? And I think that's the first time she's actually thought about how her actions were hurting, like literally hurting people. So yeah, those two scenes really, really got me.
Hmm.
Jakar talking about his past, and then Delenn being confronted with her past.
Yeah, especially for
So
Delenn, because her action was a act of sacrifice, because she gave up a lot in her Minbari status and place in society, and probably a lot of friends and family don't want to talk to her anymore either. So for her to give all that up and then to have that put into her face when she's trying to build this union between these two races in order to prevent them from,
Yeah.
re-entering hostilities, that was a powerful moment for her. And this whole what we've been talking about with Jakar and Londo is a great example of the power of science fiction, in that you can address these real world issues in an off world way without antagonizing viewers, at least from the outset. Maybe when they think about it a bit later on, they might, depending on their positions, they might be either happy or upset with the episode. But science fiction, but at least it generates discussion if people watch it and want to talk about it afterwards. And that's the power of science fiction.
Yeah. Well said, both of you. I did want to just casually mention, I thought Garibaldi my goal is not to get fired doing this interview. And Susan telling the story about her brother
Yep.
and do that. So I thought everyone had a little point on screen. Didn't know if there's, before I get to the two sponsors of the show, anything else, anyone else in the interview you want to talk about, or the storyline that the Centauri have been using Babylon 5 to get weapons through there, I guess, which is, against Earth's, I guess the state, the station's, neutrality, right? I guess you can't ship weapons through Switzerland to get to where you're in battle, right?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Karen. Go ahead.
Well, they've mentioned that before, that you can't have weapons on the station, that they confiscate stuff. So I would assume that goes to ships that come in. They can't be carrying things like that. Number one, because it's dangerous. And number two, because, Babylon 5 doesn't want to be in the middle of any of that, which they got pulled into in this case. So yeah, trafficking, bad. I mean, there's nothing else I can say about that. But I did like that Sheridan took a stand with the Centauri. I guess it was a cruiser or something that
and called their bluff.
Right.
Bluff.
Again, we see the captain making a call that might not be traditional, but it ended up working. So yeah, I appreciated that.
Anything else, Lou?
Yeah, I was Karen talking about the cruiser. I'm blanking out on what did he do again I just watched the episode and I can't remember what he
said
did.
That he would fire if the cruiser wouldn't let ships in and out, because the cruiser was threatening to barricade.
Yeah, they were doing
the traffic.
Blockade. Right.
And and he said, we're gonna come at you if you do barricade. And they sent that ship through, calling his bluff, saying, you're gonna let him through or we're gonna fire on you. So I like that he called.
I don't know why I'm blanking out on that part of the episode. I just watched it. That's weird. Yeah, I thought that was well done, and I'm kind of blanking on what was the point, the question again? Sorry.
Well, no, I just, any other thoughts about this? The Centauri, the Centauri blink.
I got it. Yeah, I got it now.
Then the Narn come and blow away, even though Sinclair is going, no. So there's actually Babylon 5 is becoming a war zone without them trying to be.
Right.
All the different things of, like Susan's discussion, Garibaldi's, anything else we want to cover before we talk about.
Yeah, there's just Karen threw me for a loop.
I'm sorry.
I'm back on track now. I'm again, because I don't have the context of the universe. My assumption was always that the Narn and Centauri worlds were relatively close to one another, or not that far apart. So it seems that going to Babylon 5 to transfer weapons is out of the way, but I don't know. Maybe it is between those worlds, but they've never really established that. Though we know that it's in Epsilon Eridani, which I think in Star Trek is where Vulcan is, but that's interesting as well. So yeah, it was interesting, and I do like that they forced them to stand down and whatnot, but I'm really curious to see where the series is going forward from this point on, because it's getting pretty blatantly close to overrunning the other species that and I don't know if other races are getting involved in this war, or are they all steering clear of it. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Okay. Let's talk about one. This was presented by the Interstellar Alliance, right? Their explorers. We've seen them before. That they are a corporation that goes out and tries to find things and brings them back. So that is a just putting a little bell. We will see them again. But the big one is the psychor commercial. So you're chuckling, Lou. So let's start with you.
Yeah, it was pretty tongue in cheek, and I'm aping a lot of other commercials about doing something that will improve your life or whatever, or like join the Boy Scouts of America or whatever, something like things along that line. So I thought the three actors played their roles well, the mother, the son, and the recruiting agent. So I got quite a chuckle out of it, and it was interesting that like it really felt false in the aspect of the mother being so happy about her son going to psychor. Like I just because normally he wouldn't be staying at home, right? If he was found to be telepathic, he would be taken away to be trained. So that aspect of the thing didn't ring true. I'm curious, did they just put it in because they felt the rest of the episode was so heavy that they needed a bit of a comedic break, or is this just showing again another aspect of we've seen the psychor in action, we know what they're really like, what they're really capable of, and this commercial is putting a spin on them that makes them seem like something that we don't think that they really are. So it was interesting from that perspective as well.
I'll give my thoughts after Karen gives hers.
Okay, I have a sneaky suspicion that the psychor being a sponsor on this channel has a lot to do with what's going on. That's just my thought. And I want to say,
in what perspective?
as in they are in collusion with the senator and whatever the agenda is that they're pushing on this station, like the My Pillow guy advertising on Fox. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, and it kind of. I'm gonna have people following me for this, but it kind of, struck me as kind of Scientology-esque. Again, please don't follow me with the camera, but yeah, it kind of felt like that. As in, we have the testing stations for you to come in, and we'll give you food and housing.
We're everywhere,
right?
Yeah, I mean, they specifically use that line. You can go. We're everywhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's giving us a very lighthearted look at the fact that they're very sinister. And just from my perspective, and here's a little look into Karen's background. In the 80s, there were lots of subliminal message things going on, right? You heard a lot about like backward masking and that kind of thing. That's when I was still going to like a youth night at my church, and they actually played Stairway to Heaven backwards to tell us how evil it was. And I rolled my eyes a lot because it didn't sound like much of anything to me. I think it was just, even if they did put that stuff in there, it's just out of the realm of possibility that they were trying to conscript us. But I know I was fascinated with it back then. Even, Styx put out an album, Mr. Roboto, that had some backward masking on it on purpose. And there were books put out about it, about subliminal things in advertising, about the frame in The Exorcist that flashes, and in this commercial for the psychor at the end of it, and it's blatant. I mean, it's not supposed to, for us at least.
Right.
It flashes on the screen, and we can read that it says, the psychor is your friend or whatever. And I'm sure they did that because there's a rule against that.
So I take it you saw that too, Lou, correct?
I don't think I did, to be honest.
Okay, so during the commercial, there is a point, and it has to be it 2 something per second, or I can't remember the exact numbers, but they did it 4. They doubled the size so that, and before the audience, before the episode was released, JMS did say, for those of you with a recorder, record the episode, you will be rewarded. And so during the psychor commercial, if you pause it to right, you'll see trust the psychor. Psychor is your friend. And
Right.
the
It's
idea,
superimposed over.
yeah,
I mean, it's not just a blank screen, so
yeah,
it's hard
it
to
is.
see if you're not looking for it.
It is a subliminal message that in the world of Babylon 5 is the psychor is sending a message to the general public, and that the general public should not have seen.
Right.
But to make it legal, they had to make it where you could see it and to tell the story.
Right.
We know that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I know. I think those came about in the 80s, those laws that it wouldn't allow anything on TV to be under the radar, as it were. It had to be a certain amount of frames.
You can't put this scene of a desert when you're selling Coca-Cola.
Right.
Subconsciously, you're like, oh, I'm really thirsty.
Right. Or write SEX in the ice cubes or whatever. Yeah.
I can't believe I missed that.
It's worth watching. Go all the way.
It's right at the end of the episode when there's a voiceover that's saying something, and the boy and his mother and the agent are all talking. Hey, thank you very much. It's one of those, and it flashes on the screen. And
the psychor is your friend. Trust the corpse, and it was long enough to satisfy American television regulations, but it wasn't for French television. It is. The FCC considers a symbol to be 2 frames per second out of the standard 24. So we made the blip 4 frames total.
Okay, good. That there's still a part of me from all that went on, and it's kind of ironic that actually looking into all that and hearing all about it kind of gave me this almost a knee-jerk reaction when I see it now, where that was kind of the whole point of subliminal stuff, was to plant something in your brain that you would have a reaction to later. And I think the whole learning about it kind of thing did that for me anyway. Kind of makes the hair stand up on my arms and stuff. I harken back to all the times I read those books and I got creeped out by it. And, but I do think maybe that is why I think the psychor is tied in more, and why I feel like it's more sinister, because Lou didn't see it and I did. And so maybe that puts a different spin on it, that I saw that they were trying to indoctrinate through this, not only the message of the commercial, but that it's flashing this "we're your friend" thing on the screen. And I really do, I have an inkling that they're going to be embroiled in all this. Also, they mention the Mars colony, but only a little bit. Mm-hmm. And they make it sound like they're terrorists, when, it wasn't Mars colony making all that noise. It was them trying to assert their rights and them getting stepped on.
Yeah.
So you can see that too, that they're kind of pushing that agenda as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Anything else we need to cover? No. All right.
No, I don't think so.
All right. You want to start us out, Lou, with a rating?
I'll give it 7.5 mugging faces in the audience behind the camera.
That was funny.
Yeah.
Like the Today Show.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change no matter where we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Karen?
What did you give it?
7.5.
7.5. I'll go 8. 8 touching stories of Jakar's background.
Okay. I am going to go 8 out of 10 subliminal messages. I think this was really well done. I remember being really happy to see this kind of change. And so good stuff. Karen, I know I forwarded you email from our favorite emailer this time. Do Texas on the Shock. She sent us.
You did?
Okay, I can read it again. Yes. I know I did this time, but
I'm
yes.
sorry. I
That's
don't see
okay.
it.
She started with a link to Fangoli's Law, TV's tropes. And then she says anything, or they say, I don't know why I want to think our
Finagle.
writer is yes. Anything that could go wrong will go wrong in the worst possible way. In this case, the war comes right to B5's doorstep where a news crew happens to be aboard to record the whole thing. Now, I'm sure this will spark an entire conversation about news media these days. I will refrain except to say I've started turning to foreign news sources because they don't have any skin in the game. Now let's stop propaganda. Notice how Torkman worded her comment about the Mars colony. Separatists who use acts of terror to intimidate the Earth-loyal majority. And Jacquard dismisses report that the Narn have lost 6 out of 7 engagements with the Centauri as propaganda. Everything Londo says is propaganda. And of course, let's not forget that this episode is called Now for a Word from our sponsors, and the word is the psychor is your friend, trust your corpse. I do find that report interesting. Some have suggested this might be due to Londo's new friends, but I don't think so. Shadow attacks thus far have been fast hit and run attacks, ambushes that leave no witnesses and no evidence. The engagements Torkman talked about are seemingly battles of record against the Centauri themselves, and we've already seen the Narns were on the defense seemingly right from the start, which begs the questions, what do the Narns do now? It seems they only have 2 options, sue for peace or try to force a stalemate. And now the new Ministry of Public Morale, Mr. Orwell here would like a word. Oh, and Senator Quantrill, do you actually have an opinion on anything, sir? Well, of course I do. Everyone has opinions, but my opinions really isn't the question here. Yeah, I don't think so. Overall, I enjoy the episode, but what I actually find most interesting are hints of what's going back on Earth. They are ominous. Really looking forward to the next ones and really the rest of the season. This is Texas Alashok signing off. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. It has been 2 or 3 weeks since we posted anything, but Lou, did we get some feedback on the YouTube channels?
Yes, we did for episode 14. There, All the Honor Lies, which was the episode where Sinclair was, or Sheridan, Sinclair Sheridan. That you listeners are going to get mad.
Yeah.
See, 2 weeks away, and I'm confusing their names again.
Yes.
That is so funny. Don't use the similar names for characters. It's so annoying.
Got you.
Okay, so this is where he was framed for killing the was it Centauri? I think it was a Centauri, or was it a Minbari? I can't remember.
Yeah, Minbari.
Minbari. Okay. Yes, a Minbari. M. Bennett writes he's thrilled for the renaissance of interest in the series and the resulting podcast YouTube reactor synergy. I'm following at least 4 YouTube reactors as well as 6 podcasts. I am drinking deeply after many thirsty years. And even though I've been a dedicated rewatcher for decades, I'm amazed at all the insights and connections that are new and fresh to me. So that's very cool. And that's, that's one of the reasons why people get together and talk, because different perspectives always come up with different nuggets of gold that other people hadn't thought of. So that's very cool. Chrism says, it's only recently occurred to me that when Londo mentions Minbari lying to save face, he's referring to the episode where Lenier covered for Londo cheating in the casino. Okay. I do remember that. Yeah, that makes sense. A good point. Very good. Iffy FXX. I want to say SFX all the time instead of FSX. In the gathering, the Vorons would rather let Kosh die than let the humans open his encounter suit to treat him. They were also going to destroy Babylon 5. That's how much they care about not being revealed. Yeah. And I'm very curious about that, because I would still going to put my swag out there about them being future humans of some kind, but we'll see. And then he comes back again with Sheridan. This can give them something. He gave up his command insignia, physically just a piece of plastic, but it was also symbolic. And I think we mentioned that, didn't we? That it
we
was,
did.
that was, yeah. And then even in war, there are war crimes like targeting civilians, but this was a warship that was not going to take hostages. And it was not really a war. It was an extermination. Humans could not even target Minbari ships. Okay. Unfortunately, because of the gap, I'm kind of cloudy on what he's referencing there. But and then if he says again, speaking of merchandise, Patricia Tallman pranked JMS by pretending to sell Lita's underwear. That's good.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think this is a new one. Chloeana. Thank you very much for reading my comment, even though it was a different podcast. Oh, okay. I broke my leg recently and had to have surgery, so I've been spending too much time in bed and listening to Babylon 5 podcasts and reactions have been keeping me sane. So thank you for the role you have been in playing for my sanity. No, you're most welcome, and we hope that this 2-week gap didn't edge you back towards insanity, but we're back.
Yes,
so
and we sending you wishes for quick healing.
Exactly.
Yes, from all of us.
Yeah. Yes. And then there's some banter back and forth about the Vorlons broke your leg, and they could neither confirm or deny it. So
that's great.
Good. And then if he says in a conventional war, sending a fake distress signal to lure and kill the enemy would be something closer to targeting the Red Cross or something. Not really, but you get the idea. That doesn't imply in this case because the Minbari had no intention of rendering assistance. Still, you can imagine how fierce the warrior caste must be for being ordered to stop the war and not even being told why. Yeah, that's exactly. Definitely we discussed that as well. CPMF 2112. I don't know if they're doing the Rush album there, but if you are, thank you. The bear in space was funny, although it wouldn't have gotten out that far due to the station gravity, and it would have been a navigation hazard for ships hitting it as it would have been frozen. So and hitting it at spaceship speeds could have been deadly to a pilot. I guess that's possible. I don't know. It's kind of like pigeons going into a jet engine. So and then you already responded to that, Karen. You said with a hand wave.
Yep.
And Texas is here as well. Podcasts. Let's see. I've got this Gray 17, B5 for the first time, and for reactions, there's Mega, Medusa, Cascade, Chosen Reactions, a young lady named Shelly, and the kid at Jones Reactions. And there's a few reactors who, if they ever start on B5, I'll become a patron of. Maybe I have a problem.
No,
that's just the active ones.
Yes.
I've listened to the down below, the audio guide. My favorite was Jump 8, the Babylon 5 rewatch. I don't know if that was supposed to be Jump 8.
I'm sure it's Jump Gate.
Babylon 5 rewatch podcast, mainly because their newbie Nick, who referred to himself as the Nick, was a student of history, so he's always picking these historical references and allusions of what is happening in the current episode. Yeah, it's definitely if someone's a student of history, these types of shows are just got to be really fascinating for them for sure. And let's see what else we got here. Sorry for if he gets the last comment. Cameras everywhere is not just a matter of technology. More importantly, it's a matter of whether people want or tolerate being tracked everywhere all the time. Just because the UK doesn't mean it's desirable or inevitable. Pacified Americans may be okay with the NSA collecting all their communications, but that doesn't make it a good thing. We can make a different choice. And yeah, I've got no argument with that, except that we're talking about a enclosed container in a vacuum, and cameras would be just necessary for monitoring station security and status. So
yeah,
I think in the real world, that definitely could be a social choice or a political choice, where a political party could run on a platform of saying cameras are invasion of privacy, therefore we want them all restricted to certain areas or to certain times a day or blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah,
but I that would be an interesting, and I'm kind of surprised that nobody's really championing that, either pro or against, and I could see
Yeah.
it more a cause of being against having cameras everywhere. But yeah, maybe that's something that will still happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Good. All right. Well, we are back in the saddle. It should be, knock on wood, back recording every week. Next week is a big one.
Ooh.
And so
say no more.
That is all I'm going to say. I urge you to, if you do not have plans today, watch it this evening.
I do have to say, my husband has watched the show.
Yes.
And every once in a while, I'll make an offhanded comment and he'll just shake his head and walk away. So I'm getting a feeling that we're talking about stuff that he wants to talk about, but he knows that he can't.
Yeah. Yes.
So
yeah. Next week we will cover In the Shadow of Zahadu. And so
heard that term before.
I will look forward to talking about that a lot.
That was a really good movie with Olivia Newton-John, where she was a muse. I'm sorry, that's Xanadu. That's a whole different.
That In the Shadow of Xanadu would be a totally different episode.
It would be, yes, definitely.
Now I want SCTV to do that. Yes. If someone wants to reach you, how can they, Karen?
I am at Oliveria on the Twitter machine. And there's a link in my bio to my blog, at which you can find a bunch of other links. But that blog is alliesstuff.com. ALLIESSTUFF.com.
All right. And Lou?
You can find me on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, or on the Twitter at Lou W. Sitzma, or this S King podcast. And we do other podcasts besides this one. We do the JKLM Media, also do a writer's podcast, and a Stephen King podcast.
Yes, and I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. Now that my little Bruce vacation is ended, I am doing a little bit, but I am I am about 20 episodes away from hitting episode 1000.
Oh my God.
Set Listing Bruce. So looking forward to, I haven't recorded it yet, but I have booked a very special guest. No, not a
Bruce
band, no, but someone that is pretty important and special. So I'm excited about it.
Cool.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, listeners. Thank you so much for your patience. We missed you, and thank you for continuing to follow us and comment. And we will be back next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. And scene.